From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. This is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Do not forget the Junior. It's very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, review. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. Also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. It's Monday, big week in the NFL calendar. But first off, you are back, my friend. Whoa, what you've been battling that fever, huh? What's going on?
Every time I think it's gone, it would come back at like 1 a.m., but I'm back, I'm good, refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to talk about some
We're
Saints.
going to talk some sports. We're gonna get this podcast schedule back on track this week as we normally do each and every week here for the Overtime Podcast. And it's right on time because it is a big week. How you feeling today? You feeling better?
Oh, yeah, I'm feeling good. We got some good food over there.
That was fantastic. We had the meet and greet over at the Saints facility. All the coaches were there. All the media was there. Some of it was interviews. Some of it was just talking. We got to hang out for an hour. It was a really cool event. First of its kind, at least as far as I've been covering the team.
Yeah.
So it was good to get to know some of the guys I knew from covering the team because some are back and some guys I didn't know but had some connections to just based off of conversations and mutual friends and where we grew up in the city of New Orleans. So it was a good day. So shout out to the Saints for that. I thought it was pretty cool to invite us and have that event. But in that event, obviously, free agency comes up because we were literally talking to coaches as free agency is happening. It was a little weird, but fun nonetheless. On the same day, X shut down and crept back up. It was a crazy day. But at that meet and greet, the topic came up. And the topic was obviously Derek Carr, big news over the weekend, and that's what we're going to go with the big picture today.
Right. You guys know by now that the Saints restructured Derek Carr and brought that number that they're over the cap all the way down to about $7.1 million. They're over the cap according to Spotrac. And a lot of big moves today. We'll get to some of those moves regarding the Saints later, but we got to start with Derek Carr because we were able to talk to Kellen Moore. And for the first time since he arrived in New Orleans, or should I say back in New Orleans, we were able to talk to Doug Nussmeier, the new offensive coordinator for the Saints. And before we talk about what we heard from them, we're going to let you guys talk about what you heard from them because we're going to air Kellen Moore first and then we'll go with Doug Nussmeier. But something stood out to me. I'm curious to see if it'll stand out to you as well.
Certainly, you take this job with the intentions of, some of the top players being here, and we felt very comfortable with them. Obviously, anytime you go through these things, it's great to connect first as people and build those relationships and go from there. And so, I'm really excited to work with them.
Excited about our whole room, really excited. That was part of the opportunity, that when you look at opportunities and you're in the quarterback room, just really excited about Derek, what he's done in his career. Great admiration for what he's done. Really looking forward to what we can build off of here. And then, obviously Spencer, Jake, Ben, those guys all bring great things to the table too. So really looking forward to, we're in this phase here. We got a lot of evaluation going on of, our system. We're also looking at players and free agency in the draft. And then really looking forward to the opportunity when we get our players here.
So that was new Saints head coach Kellen Moore, new offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier. We both got to talk to Moore for a little bit, but Doug Nussmeier just so happened to be on my side, and it kind of took a while to get to the Derek Carr topic, but once it did, the first thing that stuck out to me was how non-committal he was. First thing I expected was, we're excited to have Derek, we're locked in on him this season, yada, yada, yada. We're excited to build around him. But the first place he kind of went was, I'm excited for the entire quarterback room. And then he went to, and I'm excited to see what will happen in the draft and the free agency and just to work with the unit as a whole. And it was very non-committal for a guy who they just made a big deal or a big move in restructuring him and who the GM was very committal to when he was in Indianapolis for the Combine, saying Derek Carr is a quarterback that we can win with. I was more expecting that from Doug Nussmeier instead of what he gave us. But what he gave us is very interesting because, you talked to Kellen Moore, and Kellen Moore also kind of danced around the Derek Carr topic a bit as well.
I don't know if I would call it danced around him. He was definitive, and, he said, we're excited. what we have to offer. I took the job, knowing we're gonna have our best players and we're gonna work with him. I didn't listen. I wasn't around Doug Nussmeier. It sounded to me like the assistant coaches just were afraid to say the wrong thing, so they kept it fairly generic. Kellen Moore was kind of in the same mode he was in the introductory press conference, but he did confirm everything. But my read on it is simply this: it's kind of all business. It's all business for 2025 going forward. I mean, everyone understands the situation. Everyone understood the situation each side was in. And, I don't know if this is the ideal situation for either side, for the Carr camp or the Saints camp, but it wasn't so bad on either side that they couldn't come together. And given the circumstances, they're dealing with it, and they're going to deal with it for at least, one more season. That was my interpretation of their reaction to the actual restructure of Derek Carr. Would you like me to get into my read on the actual restructure of Derek Carr?
Let the people know.
Because we've been talking about this and talking about this and talking about this. I said Derek Carr is not coming back without a restructured contract, and more than likely it was going to be the big restructured contract.
Look how much room it cleared out, by the way.
I mean, this is what we were saying. I was naming all those moves if they were to cut him, and then look, you make that one move, and then look, you're like 2 moves away from getting it done. I mean, you have a respectable cap number right now. So it was always the outcome we were expecting on this podcast. In the prior podcast, we had estimated, had they cut Derek Carr, yes, they could have done it. And yes, with a new coach, this is the 1 year you probably could have got away with it and not had any moves in free agency, but it would have I estimated 16 moves to get salary cap compliant. And even if they weren't going to be free agent active, they were going to sign 1 or 2 players, probably would have had to do more. So, which means if you would have cut Derek Carr, all today you would have seen restructure, cut, restructure, cut. Probably a lot of y'all would have been fine with that, but business-wise and fiscally speaking, it was the, I don't want to call it the safest, but it was the most likely path. And more often than not, Mickey Loomis takes the most likely path when it comes to these types of decisions. So that's where they're at, and that's what we all generally predicted was going to happen. Even though some people were, I don't know if they were trying to will it into existence the other way. They were just, and when I saw the reaction from some people, both fans and people covering the team, I was like, just because you hope for it doesn't mean it was likely going to happen. If you're just going to be like the emotionally, run hot type of person and get all upset, then yes, of course that news is going to upset you. But if you obviously looked at it logically, it was always going to be the right move. Anyway, it was good.
Are you worried? Because I see a lot of people making a big deal about the cap hit for next year. Is that kind of being overblown?
No, I'm not worried about that one bit because A, they can get out of it even if they want to take the whole dead money hit. B, it's going to be a higher salary cap next year, which is part of the strategy of why they do what they do. Is yes, we'll take the dead money hit. It's going to cost more, but it's a smaller percentage of the pie. And C, you can also post June 1st of next year. I'm not even worried about 2026. But look, I mentioned the emotion and frankly the anger. I mean, I'm sure you saw it explode on social media, fan base.
Well, it still is.
Media. And look, I have said it on this podcast. I'll say it again. I'm not going to belabor this point, but look, the Saints fan base, the strong section of the fan base that hates Derek Carr, let's just call it what it is. They hate Derek Carr. We feel he just hasn't been that bad of a player to warrant the unhinged nature, the unhinged reaction that he gets at every turn from media and fans that just don't like him. And look, it's not just, he's not Drew. There's a level of venom. I mean, not since Aaron Brooks have we seen this level of scorn towards a quarterback. But all that aside, I really don't understand what they expected out of Carr in this situation. All he did was say he's not taking a pay cut, something everyone in America can do. I mean, you have to suffer the consequences if you don't, but all you did was basically say, I signed a contract, I'm not taking a pay cut, I'm not adjusting it, do whatever you have to do to make it work, but if you got to cut me, you got to cut me. So be it. So that's just really where it ultimately stood. And then if you want to be angry at someone or something, be angry at the scenario where you either have to choose a quarterback like Derek Carr, who's going to be 34 years old, who's 14-13 as a starter, doesn't really excite a lot of people, or 17 moves to get salary cap compliant. That's not a Carr problem. That's the Saints' problem. Getting themselves in that situation where those are the two best choices. Those are the only two choices is more of a mark
issue
on the management and organization, the way it's been run. And those decisions were made well before Derek Carr got here. The same strategy that they used with the Drew Brees era, they're still using now, and it has caught up to them. So that's where the anger needs to go. And look, I know a lot of y'all have been angry at Mickey Loomis and the way the organization is running things. So I don't want to say y'all they've skirted responsibility. They have not. But it just feels like they have directed it at Derek Carr when, frankly, all he did was, I signed a contract. I'm honoring the contract. And then that brings me to the pay cut situation, because a lot of things happened over the weekend where news came to light that Derek Carr was willing to test the market. Did you see that? Where he was willing to test the market. And to that, it felt weird to see that printed or hear that report. But when you really think about it, I don't know how far down the rabbit hole they went when it came to discussing a pay cut. But like we have said before, when a player publicly declares they will not take a pay cut, which is what Derek Carr was doing when Catherine Terrell asked him that after the season. He was making sure he drew that line in the sand. He is basically saying, I am okay if they cut me.
Yep.
I am okay. I'm not taking a pay cut. Using in NFL, if you don't take a pay cut, the team is probably going to cut you, and it happens all the time in the NFL, and I can go out on the open market, and I believe either A, I can get what I'm close to making now, or B, I'm going to make more than whatever the offer is you're offering me for the pay cut. So when you decline to take a pay cut, that's essentially what you do. That's essentially what Derek Carr was doing. He was saying, I'm okay if they cut me. And if they cut me, I am fine with my market value on the market, on the free agent market. Not every player has that kind of leverage. Not every player has that kind of confidence. And look, Derek Carr was taking a risk by doing that because there is no guarantee. For the record, look, Sam Darnold got $33 million today. I don't think Derek Carr would have gotten that at an open market. Maybe probably would have got around 25 or so, but I don't think he would have got $33 million. I think he would have started somewhere else. But regardless, didn't happen. So when reports came out that he was willing to test the market and you saw the reaction to it, well, he kind of already did that by saying he wasn't taking the pay cut, because by not taking the pay cut, he was basically daring the Saints to cut him because he knew that was the next option. And what happened? The Saints ended up saying, okay, I can cut him. I can post June 1st him. I can cut him, take $50 million dead money hit, and now they got to make the 16, 17 other moves, or I can restructure him. What did they do? They restructured him. So technically, you could say Carr kind of said, I was willing to test the market. I was willing to risk it by going to the market. And the Saints said, well, you know what? Nah, you're our best option. We're just going to go this way. And that's essentially what happened. So that is where they currently stand in terms of pay cuts, conundrum, or scenario, how they ended up restructuring him, and frankly, the emotion, per usual, guided at Derek Carr. But I will finish with this, because I have been mostly defending Derek Carr, and I don't know how I became this guy locally, but I have become somewhat of the Derek Carr defender locally, something I never intended to be. I feel like I'm just pretty fair with what he does and what he doesn't do. But let me just say this now, definitively. It's time for Derek Carr to say something. It's time for Derek Carr to go public. It's time for Derek Carr to embrace his current situation. I didn't really care that he wasn't here for the Super Bowl. I didn't really care that he wasn't here for Mardi Gras. In fact, now that it's coming out that maybe his football future wasn't determined during those, what is that, a 6-week stretch, month stretch, whatever it was, I can actually makes more sense him kind of retreating to the back a little bit, laying low, see what happens. But, and it would have been awkward answering all kind of crazy questions. But now, all decisions are made. I know it wasn't exactly like a glowing endorsement from the coaches, but they did say they want you. Kellen Moore did say he's excited to work with them. The silence needs to end if you're Derek Carr. The silence has to come to an end. You have a new head coach, a young head coach, and like it or not, you are still the face of this franchise, at least for one more season. So whether or not it's a social media post, whether or not it's an interview, whether or not some kind of public appearance, there has to be an embracing of the 2025 New Orleans Saints from the starting quarterback, who is going to be Derek Carr. The people that don't like him, he's well aware that they're always not going to like him, and they weren't going to like him even if he took the pay cut. Carr can't worry about them. He needs to step out of the shadows and embrace the organization. Everything's done. You're coming back. You got your money. You didn't take the pay cut. So what if they don't necessarily like you? A lot of the fan base or a portion of the fan base doesn't like you. You're back, starting quarterback in 2025 for the New Orleans Saints. Time to say something.
That's true, and that's really what I was thinking about the most, because when it comes to Derek Carr and the criticism that he gets, that comes with playing quarterback in the NFL. That comes with playing quarterback in the NCAA. That comes with playing
Everywhere.
the quarterback position. When things go right, more times than not, you are on a pedestal. No matter how it's happening, if you are winning games, even if you're not necessarily the reason you're winning games, if you're a winning football team, your quarterback gets most of the credit. Whether you're Brock Purdy, whether you're Dak Prescott when Zeke was leading the league in rushing, whether you're a game manager, or whether you're Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, if your team is winning, you are put on a pedestal and you get most of the credit. But if your team is not winning, if your team is losing, if you look at the calendar and you say, man, it's been a while since we've been in the playoffs, your quarterback is going to get a lot of the blame for that. And like you said, him not being around for the Super Bowl, not a big deal for me. I don't really care about the Super Bowl. His season had just ended. He has a right to go home with his family. Not being around for Mardi Gras, I had no issue with him not being around for Mardi Gras, because we all know if Derek Carr popped up on the float for Rex, for Endymion, boo,
Right.
that's all you would have heard. They would have been throwing stuff at Carr, not the other way around. So I don't blame him for skipping out on Mardi Gras. We discussed it before. I do blame him for skipping out on Kellen Moore's hiring. And maybe something happened behind the scenes where he met with Kellen Moore behind the scenes and nobody knows about it. But from all the pictures and the videos that you see of Kellen Moore arriving to the facility, Derek Carr is absent for that. For a new head coach who's an offensive mind, who, if you're here, you're going to be working with very closely, I would have liked to see him there. Like I remember Brandon Ingram, former Pelican, when he got traded to Toronto. All of his teammates are in the stands, publicly showing support. And that's what you, as the leader of this team, as the quarterback, it's about publicly showing support. And then, like you mentioned, we really haven't heard from him or anything, from him or his camp since the end of the season.
I'm gonna check his Instagram, make sure right now, just make sure he hasn't done anything. I don't want to rip him if he's already embraced it. But
right, maybe unless we've missed it, we haven't really heard anything from Derek Carr, and it is time for you to step up. As
of course, it's not working.
Right, we've heard from Kellen Moore, we've heard from Doug Nussmeier, we heard from Scott Tolzien today, the quarterback coach. We heard from Brandon Staley. Like, we're starting to get to know these coaches and everything, and the coaches are talking about the players. Doug Nussmeier, we heard what he said about Carr, or what he didn't say about Carr, but he talked about Kamara. He worked with Kamara at Alabama. Really excited to be reunited with Alvin Kamara.
Us?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I forgot about that.
He was at Alabama during the short time that Kamara was at Alabama. He talked about Taysom Hill's skill set and how excited he is to really get to see how versatile he can be in this offense, and you're seeing coaches start to open up about what this team will be, but it's kind of like everybody has to duck and dodge around the elephant in the room, that elephant being Derek Carr.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, like, the decision is done. Like, they're restructuring him. Like, he's got to be here unless are they still trying to work out some kind of trade or something?
That's the only thing.
I guess that would be the only thing left, but I don't know. I mean, look, Kellen Moore said enough, in my opinion. He didn't, throw rose petals at his feet. But he said enough, in my opinion. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't around for the Nussmeier stuff. I'm gonna go back and watch it again just to make sure, just to get a different read on the situation. But even if that's the case, and it was clear that, sounds to me like in a perfect world, the Saints would have had him back under a pay cut. I don't know how far they went down the pay cut rabbit hole. Didn't happen, and honestly, Carr had all the leverage in that situation.
Right.
I don't know how far they went in terms of a trade. I know Kellen Moore was asked directly about if there was either a request for a trade, which never was made public. And honestly, given some of the trade requests around the NFL, Carr could have done that, and I think that it would have made a lot of people mad, but probably would have made a lot of people happy too if he wanted out of here. But it never got to that point, at least publicly. Maybe there was something they were looking at. But now what's done is done. So now it's time, frankly, for, like you said, Carr, come out and say something. Or just a post. Kellen Moore. I don't know, something. Just something acknowledging the current reality of the situation, which you are going to be the Saints quarterback in 2025. And honestly, for Kellen Moore, I don't know if it's just I don't know him well enough. Let's start with the idea that, okay, we're going forward with Derek as the face of our franchise. A little bit more of that messaging as opposed to trying to be as minimal as possible while also doing just enough to pray. I don't get that. So hopefully the messaging will get a little more in sync over the next couple of weeks and months, because I think both sides could certainly use a little bit of unity when it comes to that, because it's head coach and quarterback. So let's get a little bit more unity. Let's get all on the same page and we're all kind of speaking the same language, because like it or not, they're all gonna be here in 2025.
Right, especially when you start hearing other players who are talking about how excited they are to kind of get in the building and work with these new coaches. Coaches are talking about the players. You want to hear the leader of your team speaking about that as well. But one guy we know won't be back in New Orleans next year is Paulson Adebo. Paulson Adebo signed with the New York Giants today. So
what were the numbers on that? I didn't see. What were the numbers?
I believe it was $60 million. I'll check real quick. But as we look back on Paulson Adebo's time in New Orleans, was it a success? Was it, an incomplete story? Does it leave more to be desired when it comes to Paulson Adebo?
I'm a little concerned because I don't. You got Alante, you got Kool-Aid. Now you have a big hole at cornerback. You got to sign a guy. And again, by the time you watch this pod, they may have already signed someone. They're going to have to get a free agent. They're going to have to probably draft someone. I got to credit Deuce. Deuce told us during the year, he goes, they're not going to pay him. They're not going to pay him. They're not going to pay him. And was that top of the I don't know. I'm not sure where that ranks in terms of average salary per year.
Looks
for
like
Paulson
about
Adebo.
$18 million per season.
Look, great for him. I mean, that's a great deal.
J.C. Horn just got about $25 million.
Yeah, he reset the market, didn't he?
Yeah.
So look, that's good. That's a good contract for him. That's probably that's probably, if they really want him, that's probably something the Saints, could have matched because of the way they structure contracts. But when a guy goes into his last year of his contract, you don't extend them. You put yourself at risk, and then the holding penalties or the defensive pass interference penalties, I know really irked them. And then him getting injured, I don't think they expected the recovery to be as fast as it was, because he's out there doing flips and everything right now with that broken leg. So good for Paulson Adebo. Tough break for the Saints. But I do think they can replace him with someone at least in the same neighborhood of his skill set for probably cheaper than that.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast life comes at you, because I remember us sitting in these seats 6-7 months ago, and we were talking about how the Saints secondary was easily the strongest unit on this team. And now that was a unit with Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Alante Taylor, and they had just traded up to draft Kool-Aid McKinstry. And now we look at it, and Marshawn's in Washington, Adebo's in New York, Alante Taylor, as things stand right now, that's your number one cornerback. Kool-Aid McKinstry is your number 2, and your number 3 is what, Ugo Amadi? Or
isn't he a free agent?
I think he's a free agent too. I don't even know who your number 3 corner is right now. You saw Shamar Jean-Charles, step in at times last year. Rico Payton during the preseason. There's a lot of uncertainty in the secondary right now when it comes to the Saints, and it's crazy how fast that happened. And now you're looking at a team that could potentially go into day one of the season with Alante Taylor as their number 1 cornerback, which is a bit concerning.
Well, I mean, look, I wonder if this means Alante goes to nickel or does he go outside? I know the one thing Alante wants is to stay one place. He doesn't want to move inside, outside. He had
some success with nickel.
I actually think he was becoming one of the better nickels in the NFL. He always preferred outside. So that'll be up to the new coaching staff to decide. Brandon Staley, Terry Joseph, new DBs coach. So that'll be interesting to see. But there goes your biggest need right there. I mean, you don't have a starter. You need 3 in today's NFL. Even if you have Alontae Taylor on the inside, well, who's your other outside guy? And look, Kool-Aid had a decent rookie year, but he was by no means perfect.
Yeah, he's got a lot to learn.
And he battles some injuries. So anything else in terms of Saints-related news?
Devon Godchaux, for the Louisiana legend himself, he's coming back to the Big Easy. I believe the Saints trading a 7th-round pick to get him back and kind of shore up the interior of that defensive line. And that's something we talked about last podcast with them potentially going to a 3-4.
And this is a true 3-4 nose tackle. Devon Godchaux, I think, played that 3-4 with New England, and I guess New England is shifting systems to a 4-3, which is interesting because Mike Vrabel, I think, played stand-up edge as a 3-4 guy. So that's certainly interesting. But this is a great move because who are they going to with that 7th-round pick? And this is a guy that's going to come in and be a definite, at the very least, rotational run-down guy. Then they needed some help on that run defense. Even with the new scheme, he can play the 2 gapping style. He can shade the nose tackle, whatever the case may be. I really like this move as the first addition from another team, and it was a very low cost. Now, I know they got to adjust his contract a little bit, but I really do like the Godchaux pickup. And how about the new coaching staff? Already buying some favor with the fan base by having another LSU guy on the team.
Right, and they also, speaking of interior defensive linemen, they also extended the contract of defensive tackle Nathan Shepard, which makes you wonder about now Colin Saunders. You trade for a DT, you extend another DT. Colin Saunders, who's been a bit of a fan favorite, where's his place now in all this?
I said it's probably going to be one or the other, possibly both. I don't think neither would be back. I didn't think it would be, door number C or door number 3, where none were back. Neither one of those guys are back. But if you look at the skill set and the body type, Shepard had more of the body type you would look for a 3-4 guy. And they extended him, which gives them some more present-day cap space. So that's an interesting choice. I think that's more of a prototype type thing. So I think, we'll see what happens with Colin Saunders.
Yeah, and I'm excited just to see how this defense shapes up because Brandon Staley talking today, he basically said, look, these days, whether you're 4-3, 3-4, a lot of it is nickel and dime. 3 cornerback, 4 cornerback sets. So he's less focused on that and more getting the right personnel.
All right, we got to get out of here. Is that right?
We do.
Yeah, all right. We're right up against it. All right, for Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.